We did think about the Cheetle Trinity of Don Cheadle, the Cheetle statue in Cheadle, Alberta. But it was a bit of a moonshot, to be honest. And again, sometimes I think as Canadian marketers, we need to give ourselves permission to dream that someone like Academy Award Don Cheadle would actually interact.
In an ever-changing world that's all about staying connected, building connections, and seeing where the next collaboration takes a marketing campaign. From an initial brief to the follow-through, what paths are going to make a campaign success more than a possibility? Hi, I'm Brett Marchand, CEO of Plus Company. This is Partners in Possibility. Here's a fun fact. You know when you eat Cheetos and you get that orange dust on your fingers? Well, that dust actually has a name, Cheetle. So when Cheetos discovered a small Albertan village called Cheetle, they saw an opportunity to connect the two. Today on the show, I speak with Jess Spaulding, CMO at PepsiCo Canada, and Josh Budd, Chief Creative Officer at Citizen Relations. Together, they launched the Cheetle in Cheetle campaign, a 17-foot tall monument to the Cheetos Puff and its famous orange dust. You might have seen it on the news or on Jimmy Kimmel, because the statue quickly became a viral sensation, attracting thousands of fans from all over and making the campaign a global phenomenon. Today, we talk about how the campaign came to be, the strategies behind the viral marketing, and the impact it had on the brand. Here's my conversation with Jess and Josh. Let's start with the objective before we actually talk about what the campaign was. So what were you trying to achieve with this, Jess?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny to even call this a campaign, I think, at times, because it was a bit more of like just a bold act. And the objective of that was really, Cheetos in Canada is known for so many distinct assets, whether it's, our spokesperson, Chester, the bright orange bag and product. But we knew that, we wanted to make sure that we really unleashed the power and the fandom that we know that this brand has in Canada. And so we felt like we had to do something different, had to do something bold, and really equate, some of the assets of the cheesiness and the irresistibility and the mischievousness into something that was physical. And so this brief was really set out to try to make a statement of connecting the idea of the Cheetle, which is the orange dust that gets left on your hands, the delicious Cheetle.
Had it many times.
Right. With the brand and really speak to a new audience and really be in service of our fans of the brand. And so it was really kind of what we set out to do.
Josh, maybe just talk about the idea a little bit, because I think you've teased it here. That's, Cheetle on your fingers in Cheetle. But for our audience, maybe just describe exactly what you did.
Sure. Okay. So the ask from the PepsiCo Canada Cheetos team was not to advertise the brand and not to communicate the product, but to communicate this relationship, I guess, between the experience and the product. And again, as Jess mentioned, it's a Cheetle on your fingers. And so the brief was, how can we get this out into the world? How can we get people to celebrate this polarizing experience with the brand? And the fact that it was polarizing was something that we decided to lean into, because that means people care about it. Yeah. So the job was to get more people to celebrate it. And so then we started to look at, okay, well, how do you celebrate the things you love? You buy pictures of it, you put it on the wall, and then you start walking around the city. It's like, oh, when we really revere something, we build a monument to it. Right. So how mischievous would it be to build a monument to this, to Cheetle? And right. So of course it had to have the hand, it had to have the product itself. And so we kind of went through looking at statues and really making it look like kind of graphic and iconic and like it was carved out of stone kind of thing, with the orange popping to really bring it back to the brand. And then we looked at where we could put it. And that's where the kind of genius of the creative team, Shirley and Marley, came into place. Is they found this little hamlet in Alberta of 83, about 90-ish minutes, I think, from Calgary, called Cheetle. Spelt differently, but called Cheetle. And so when they showed it to us and they're like, we're going to put the Cheetle statue in Cheetle, Alberta, I was like, check. That makes a ton of sense. Super clever. And, from the PR space, really easy to see the headline that comes out of that. So we felt like we were kind of cooking with gas there. And then once we started to look at Alberta, and it is kind of like the Canadian capital for oversized food landmarks.
Yeah.
Which, as you know, I think we were chatting earlier, Brett, like you have some experience with that.
I grew up in Alberta, by the way. There's a lot of small towns in Alberta that are famous for having giant statues of food. The first I think of which is a huge Ukrainian Easter egg, which I told these guys the story that I used to, when I was a kid, we would drive to Saskatoon from Edmonton every year, and my parents would make us stop and see the giant Easter egg. But the funny part about that is that, I mean, we didn't really want to stop at least after the first time. But now with Instagram, online, social media, I mean, it's actually a perfect idea, right? So you've got this giant hand. It's got a statue of a hand. It's got the actual Cheetle on the fingers. It's in Cheetle, Alberta. By the way, probably helpful that it's spelt Cheetle the same way as Don Cheadle, because it actually got it on the statue on Kimmel and a bunch of other things, right? Because of that, which was amazing. I'm not sure. Did you think about that, Josh, when you did it? Or I guess that's probably just luck. No.
Well, no, we did think about the Cheetle Trinity of Don Cheadle, Cheetle statue in Cheetle, Alberta, but it was a bit of a moonshot, to be honest. And again, you know, sometimes I think as Canadian marketers, we need to give ourselves permission to dream that someone like, you know, War Machine Don Cheadle, Academy Award Don Cheadle would actually interact. And lo and behold, Jimmy Kimmel kind of brokered that for us.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, that's a testament to the cultural resonance of the product and the execution that truly in an earned fashion, no brand integration, no paid partnership. It showed up on Jimmy Kimmel while he was interviewing Don Cheadle. Yeah. Jimmy offered to build a replica on Don Cheadle's property, and then they both changed Don Cheadle's Wikipedia photo to include Don Cheadle standing in front of the statue. If you go to Wikipedia now, you can see Don Cheadle still with the statue behind him. Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Just goes to show the power of earned media, right? Because I don't think there was a lot of media dollars spent against it, yet it's gotten millions, and if not billions of impressions.
Yeah.
I think it was a 5K media investment. There was one sponsored article.
Yep.
And I think when we did the math, it was like 63 million in media equivalent or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, everyone hopes their marketing campaigns go viral, but not everyone can pull it off. Besides the fact that Cheetos, as an iconic snack item created more than half a century ago, has the advantage of years and years of brand recognition, the team at Citizen Relations had a simple but labor-intensive strategy in place. A single paid article and a hardworking PR team to support it. So obviously people are showing up in Cheetle, they're taking photos of themselves, they're doing Instagram posts, etc. But then I presume it got billions of impressions with some help from the Citizen team, etc. I'm interested in what you did there.
Yeah, so I mean, the strategy very much was, let's erect it, let's put one targeted kind of regional paid sponsorship article, but then it was a bit of like, let's open a bag of Cheetos and cross our fingers and hope that people start to come. Because then the next phase of the earn strategy was, once we start to get some groundswell, use that to pitch media, use that to pitch local media. Local media gives it attention, which gets the attention of national media. And you know, the Citizen team did a really good job. Like, it was amazing to see them like spring into action. Like, when something happened, the team went and then pitched this tier media. When that ticked the box, they moved and moved on to different kind of tiers of media and different strategies, until, to be honest, it kind of took on a life of its own, right? Like, once CNN Australia and India start calling, like, those aren't organizations that we reached out to. They were now coming to Citizen and to Pepsi and talking about the campaign. So it did kind of, you know, to use the word viral, ultimately that's how it happened, but it was strategically organized to go viral out of the gate.
Yeah, I think I don't think people realize how much work there is in media relations, right? Because, you know, it doesn't, I mean, sometimes it just happens, but so rarely. I mean, Jess, you must know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm such a believer in the lever of PR as part of your overall mix for brand building. Yeah. And I think when you have iconic brands and culture, how do you harness that love to get that amplification of what you're already doing? You know, there was a lot of ads we could have ran. There was a huge campaign we could have followed from the US. And we were a little bit like, is Canada ready to go all the way to kind of this ridiculous, mischievous positioning that's a bit more in service of, kind of a younger demographic and really celebrate the fandom that exists. And we didn't know how much fandom was fully going to follow us there. And so I think that's, credit to the work that Citizen did is it was just a really brilliantly simple idea to get this thought across, but it allowed the consumers to really take it on and showcase it to other people as almost something that they discovered versus, receiving an ad.
Totally.
And so I think that's what made it so unique.
I know when we talked about this initially, internally, we were like, does it need a big logo? Everyone need to know?
Yeah.
And, with your team's guidance, we all had trust that this notion of a hand holding a Cheeto and the Cheetle was iconic enough. And not many brands can do that, frankly. Not many brands have the cachet to be able to go out with something like that unbranded and get instant kind of credit for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, huge kudos to the team, Lisa and Carolyn and Shauna, because I think, initially some of the ideas that we were kicking around had Chester involved, and it was a little bit more down the middle or expected. And this brand is anything but that. You need to be kind of ridiculous and mischievous. And so that's where, creatively we ended up on something that was a bit more out there and definitely less branded.
And we do live in a world, right, where whether it's a digital ad or a broadcast ad, there's best practices. The logo has to show up in this place. So this is really a real departure from that.
Absolutely.
And I hope it tests that paid off in terms of like when we think down the road about how we brand things.
Absolutely.
Giving some credit to the consumer and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, what actually happened when we put the statue up? I presume lots of people took pictures.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially it was literally on a farmland, essentially. So there wasn't signs pointing to it. There wasn't, we had kind of that one sponsored article, but there wasn't any other, information. So you saw kind of a slow build of then just kind of this explosion of momentum, which as a marketer is a dream for something to go, viral, which is a word that we loathe and is not ever in a brief. But you kind of just hope that maybe, something will catch the attention of your fans. And, when you have a brand that's so embedded in the flow of culture and you have people who are so passionate about it, it kind of, organically happens. And so I think initially it was, a few people here and there. And then by the end, it was thousands of people a day.
Yeah, thousands a day. We kept getting messages from our contacts there being like, yeah, there's a few people here today. Oh, there's 1,000 people here. And they definitely, it changed the tenor of this hamlet of 83 people to be really like, kind of there are 15 minutes of fame, so to speak, in Alberta, which at one point they're like, is this going to last forever? Will we just start to have thousands of people a day? So I think the temporary nature of the statue played into a bit of a good moment for them, but then let them get back to their regular days. But it was crazy. Yeah.
And some of the subtleties that you just talked about, Jess, I think were probably important and not probably, clearly important to the success of the campaign, not sort of making a loud bang, as Josh said, not having a logo on it, and branding, not putting Chester nearby, etc.
Yeah. I think had we had a monster budget and some, grand tentpole moment, we probably would have screwed it up a little bit. Right. And so I think sometimes like there's just beauty and simplicity of an idea. And that's something we talk about a lot of, what is the like true kernel of the idea? How do you do that, as well as you can and kind of remove the excess? Yeah. And so, this really was about generating awareness that, the name of this orange stuff on your fingers is called Cheetle. Like that was it. Right. And so when you bring Chester in, that does a different story. Right. When you bring, the logo in, that's a different story. This truly was something that you couldn't really ignore. And then when we had, these fans kind of show up in droves, they took over. They built a Wikipedia page for it. They did all these TikTok, videos and social social videos and they shared it organically, and that's kind of lightning in a bottle a little bit. And when I think it doesn't come from the brand so overtly, it is something that people can claim as their own, and this is a brand that fans have claimed as their own. And so how do we do more things that are in service of that?
Yeah.
I think this brand is at its best when it shows up very serious about whatever context it's in, because that's the tension and juxtaposition of how ridiculous it is, right? We've seen that with this brand globally. We've seen it in the US, and we're just now, I think, starting to foray into that in Canada. But, whether it's technology that the Cheetle, has a role in, whether it's, getting you out of, tough situations that you don't want to be a part of, or it's being part of a culture of gigantic roadside statues. I think, what we believe about this brand is that you have to kind of be committed and then let the brand be the kind of lightness to the idea. And I think that the team did an amazing job of bringing that to life.
I don't know if Cheetle has ever helped you get out of any tough situations, maybe avoiding a phone call or helping with a chore. Regardless, it's a problem or a solution we've all experienced. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Jess and Josh discuss the impacts of the Cheetle in Cheetle campaign. Welcome back to Partners in Possibility. I'm Brett Marchand. We know people arrived at the small town of Cheadle in Alberta, Canada, population 83, by the thousands to get a look at the Cheetle and Cheetle statue. And we know that the original media budget was only $5,000. But what was the overall impact of this viral campaign, and how was it perceived not only by customers, but by the marketing world? Listen, I want to talk a little bit about all these international awards we talked about up front, because I think it's, sort of award show season, right, Josh? And maybe give us the highlights, because, if you list them all, I think it's going to take the rest of the podcast.
It's a problem we're very flattered to have, that's for sure. It is award show season.
Yeah, it is. I came in today and I think you told me about 3 more of them that are happening. So it's a daily occurrence. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see Canada showing up on the global stage and in a way that is probably leading even the US team in terms of this type of activity. And we've gotten trophies and attention from all the kind of big international shows, both in the PR world, like PR Week and the Sabres, but also One Show, Clio's, D&AD, things like that. But what Jess and I were just talking earlier, what's really interesting is it's not just getting recognized in a PR stream, but it's really getting recognized in out of home, in brand experience and activation, in regional effectiveness, return on budget, overcoming challenges, things like that, which, I think is really interesting and credit to the project.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's so exciting for the industry to acknowledge the work, but I also think it helps. What I'm the most proud of is there is amazing creative work happening in Canada, outstanding innovation and creativity. And I think that we have some beautiful brands with PepsiCo Foods Canada, and Cheetos is one of many.
And listen, I talk to a lot of clients often, and I used to be a client for a long time, who say that awards don't matter. And they're not the all and end all, let's be honest. But I always say to marketers, well, if your campaigns aren't winning in international shows, that means they are not standing out against a whole bunch of other work, which means they are not standing out in a very, very crowded social media, online market right now, which means they're not getting noticed. So, if you win the kinds of awards that this campaign's winning, it means that people are recognizing it and it's standing out, which is gotta help, the brand and sales and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a tricky one, right? You never kind of set out to win an award. And I think if that had been the brief, we wouldn't have gotten to such a strong idea. And so, it's always, I think, a little bit of a shared ambition together as a client and an agency partner to have the work recognized and celebrated. But it has to come along with a lot of other things. And what I've noticed, and Cheetos has been, well awarded, the original Cheetle strategy won the Grand Prix and can for creative strategy. And it's won, Cannes Lions, it's won Clio's in the US. And so what was so exciting for me is this, I think, is really putting Canada on the map for, how can we continue the narrative, but in a way that's uniquely Canadian. And I think the Cheetle and Cheadle and really leaning into Canadian culture in Alberta in such a fun way is exactly how we're going to continue to do that.
Let's talk about the other measures of success. So I'm sure there were other things that were important, Jess, in this campaign besides we just talked about at awards. So how did you measure success with this?
Yeah. So, I mean, the primary KPI was, will people associate the word Cheetle with the dust that's the delicious dust that's on your hands? I think that's a check. So I think we've gotten Canada and beyond to talk about it, which is super exciting. And then, obviously we always believe that great work can drive business. The two are not incongruent. And so when you have work that is so effective, it starts to have people reconsider the brand or consider the brand for more occasions. And so we saw tremendous amount of growth on the brand. And it was super interesting because when we looked at the data and we're able to look at the data at a pretty, micro level, we started to look at the stores around Cheetle, Alberta, sold out of puffs. If you go and you kept going rings and rings and rings out, you could not buy a bag of these puffs. And it was because people were buying them to take pictures. Yep. So they would hold it right with the bag and the statue. But what we thought maybe it'd stay local, but what we saw, the brand is absolutely on fire. And so it's double-digit growth, which we haven't seen on the brand in quite some time. And for a brand of this scale, it's pretty incredible to have such an impact.
The statue, where does the statue go next? Any thoughts?
We've had a lot of demand for the statue, actually, and we created a couple versions. There was one that was, meant to go to Mr. Cheetle. I think a lot of people think we paid for that placement on Jimmy Kimmel with the media landscape being so kind of complicated, but that was all, organic and earned. And so, I think Don had a small reconsideration of a 17-foot statue in his front yard.
And that plus the thousands of people who would show up every day to take pictures.
Correct. I think maybe that was more, it was just safer on his Wikipedia page. But we decided to gift it to our U.S. headquarters in Plano, Texas. It's a little bit like a Statue of Liberty gift from Canada to our U.S. counterpart. So it'll live down there, and then we'll have some that travel around as well, and we'll have one at headquarters up here in Toronto as well. But I think it's just the start, right? Yeah, there's a lot of places we can take it. You never know where it's going to show up, so keep your eye out for a statue.
Jeez. Wonder where next. Thanks a lot for this. This is a great campaign. I mean, it is a great example, by the way, in Partners in Possibility. It takes a brave marketer with a good idea and a simple brief in the first place, like you talked about, Jess. And it takes a really creative thinking and some bravery to push it out. And I just think this is such a great example. And I'm with you. I hope this puts Canada even more on the stage on the creative side of things. I'm sure with your help, Jess, as well. So thanks very much for doing this, and congratulations on all you've achieved with it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Brett.
That was my discussion with Jess Spaulding, CMO at PepsiCo Canada, and Josh Budd, Chief Creative Officer at Citizen Relations. Thank you for listening to Partners in Possibility. I hope you gained valuable insights and inspiration for your next collaboration.